Welcome to EventNewsDXB. Before we begin, I've got a quick favour to ask. There's one simple way that you can support our show, and that's by hitting that follow or subscribe button on the app you're listening to the show on right now. It really does make a huge difference in helping us get the show out there to as many people as possible. So please give us a hand and click that button right now. Thanks a bunch.
Event News DXB.
You're listening to the Event News DXB podcast, your behind-the-scenes look into the world of events in Dubai, the UAE and the MENA region. I'm Ian Carless, and each week I'll bring you the latest news, industry trends and insider stories shaping one of the world's most dynamic event markets. From professional insights to Dubai's most inspiring success stories, we've got everything you need to stay ahead in the ever-evolving event industry. So, whether you're an event planner, a brand manager, or just someone who's totally passionate about the power of events, you're in the right place. To kick off the Event News DXB podcast series, who better to talk to than one of the most well-known figures in the Dubai event scene, Stefan Wieland. Originally from Germany, Stefan moved to Dubai 25 years ago and has since worked on a long and enviable list of events, both in the UAE and around the Middle East. However, he's perhaps best known as the founder of EINO, the Events Industry Night Out, a Facebook community that now has over 12,000 members and is a must-join for anyone working in the events industry in Dubai. Stefan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you for inviting me.
You're most welcome. Now, I have to confess, I did have a sneaky look at your LinkedIn profile, obviously last night and a couple of days ago. And you are a man of many talents, including, of course, EINO, which we'll get onto. But first of all, how did you end up in this region?
That's very interesting. So I came for some royal weddings to Saudi in like the end 90s. And I didn't really like it because I stayed all time in the hotel with the elevator up from my room to the ballroom. And that's it, not seen much from the region. And after the millennium in Berlin, I got a call from someone who said, can you accompany me to Abu Dhabi? I need a production guy. And I said, yes, why not? And so I went to Abu Dhabi, signed a contract for 4 weeks, stayed for a month. And after 4 months, I went back to Germany and basically decided it's better to go to the Middle East. So and since then, it's now on the 17th of January. It will be 25 years.
25, and it goes too quickly, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
I think in February, I'll have done 22 years.
Yeah.
And a similar story. I mean, you signed up for what, 4 weeks?
Yeah.
Yeah. I signed up for what I thought was going to be 2 or 3 years, 22 years ago. Yeah, no kidding. So let's get on to the meat of things. EINO. How on earth did EINO come about?
Well, that's the story that goes back to 2010. I just came from a stint with very, very nice agency where I was the production director of new technologies or something like that. And I decided to leave that company and go freelance again. At the same time, my wife changed the company and she was starting with a company called Lathe Scaffolding that was still around or is still around. And she became the first business development marketing person in that company. And she said, I have not many contacts in the industry and I have to rebuild my contacts in the industry. So we need to make an event where we all come together and have a drink at the bar to make that easy. Because, at a bar, it's easier to speak when you are in a room for like, oh, this is my company and I present this and that. So we called a couple of people and everyone told us, you will fail. It's what people said. At this time...
That's encouraging.
Yeah. At this time, you need to understand there were a lot of people still not really friends in the industry. So you had your acquaintances, but not friends. And a lot of companies worked against each other. So there was a lot of, I don't want to call this hate, but there is like jealousy and this and that. And I think we need to overcome this. This is ridiculous. We all need to work together. And at that time, 2010, there was a lot of freelance talent for the first time coming up. And we said, okay, we need to connect all of these. We need to connect agencies. We need to connect companies. We need to connect freelancers. How do we do that? With an event. So our first event was in Click. That was a champagne lounge in Emirates Towers, where we invited 40 people and 80 came. So basically everyone took another person with them and it was great. It was like, so, whoa, we never expected this. And everyone said, okay, this is this. We have to do this more regularly, et cetera, et cetera. And then we said, how can we reach out to people? And then we founded a so-called Facebook page at that time where we Yeah, it was a page, where we reached out to people and announced our event.
How long ago was this?
Also 2010.
Oh, 2010. Right.
Yes. From that, someone said, can you not change this to a group because I have a question? And then we said, yeah, we can do that. And from there, it started off to what it is now with like 12,000 people in a group, where, of course, I have to moderate about 20 post requests a day, 30 to 40 joining requests a day. And it's basically everything is monitored. Everything is rejected, approved, et cetera, based on certain criteria, because we want to keep the group focused on events. And I think so far we did quite well. We made it into a point where we talking actively to companies to become supporters. So they support us with podcast studio time. They support us with other stuff. So we can make it really, really a nice community. And I think so far we kept the momentum on. I can see our EINO events that we do bi-yearly. It has declined from the heydays. On the heydays, we had 350, 400 people on the EINO night. That actually also became a challenge because it was too many people. Trying to find a venue that can host that many people and still being the bar that we always wanted was a challenge. So when the pandemic hit, that was for us a wake-up call. So we tried the online thing, didn't work at all. So we had to say, okay, we need to skip this. This is we need to bring this back once we're all healthy again. We done that, and we are now back to 170, 200 people for a night, which is great. And the last EINO was so successful. So I left at 1 because I had to work next day. But I know from the venue, they said your guest kept us busy until like 3:30 in the morning. And it was for me like, so, okay, this industry is still a lot of things to tell, to talk, and to discuss.
Yeah. Now, we'll talk about the pandemic very shortly. But in the meantime, it can be a thankless task, can't it, running a community group like that?
Well, yes. It's basically Dana and me who are doing this, and it's a lot of work. But I think we both said in the beginning we use this as a leverage tool for work, but it became much, much more than this. And it is now for us, it's not a corporate social responsibility, it's just like a community social responsibility to run this. And we're still loving it, we're still doing it. Yes, sometimes it's really frustrating when you get messages that some people say, you didn't accept me, why? And starting discussions and all of that. Or in this post, someone wrote something that I was not allowed and this and that. And I really asked a little bit more for lenience to us as well, because we do this in our spare time. Yep. This is our social baby. Yep. We do this, we love it. But if it takes a day or two, or even if we are on holidays, please forgive us that your post is not being immediately approved. Again, we do this everything by hand and by eye, one by one, and we cannot just dedicate our whole life to this page. That's not really what it is. Yeah. Now, just moving on to the pandemic there, I can imagine that the number of people commenting and wanting to get involved in discussions increased tenfold. I know there were some quite interesting, shall we say, discussions around the time, particularly with obviously so many of us in the event industry out of work. And, there was a little bit of finger pointing towards perhaps what people felt other entities should be doing to help, etc. First of all, what were your thoughts about that whole pandemic process in relation to the industry? And then how did you manage the discussion on EINO around it? Because some of them, as I said, got a little bit heated, didn't they? Yeah. So, of course, it affected every one of us, including me at this time. And I was a little bit lucky because I got asked to work for a Canadian company on a retainer basis, which was really, really good and helped to survive that. I know others were really, really hit by it financially, of course. Some people put their life savings in to survive. Others had to leave the country to seek other opportunities. I know from people who went back to the UK and were driving UPS vans during that time. So there is people who survived. And I think thanks to the government here, who was first a little bit looked at for imposing the lockdown, but that lockdown lasted 2 months. And after the 2 months, we basically were the first countries bringing back to life. We were. I mean, other countries had it much worse, didn't they? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the whole idea of we doing this, we have to do this, we have to run a company. So I'm really thankful for the government, how they handled it. I was again lucky that I scored another project with the Expo. And during that time, Expo helped us tremendously. A lot of people from Dubai and a lot of people from all over the world, actually. And we have seen a lot of people who have never left after Expo, who are still here. We have seen a lot of professionalism coming in with Expo, because Expo said, okay, we have to do it like this, we have to do it like this. And this continues in a way where I think it's a huge improvement for us. And I think personally, but that's my own personal opinion, that we are now in the Middle East are actually the leaders of the events industry. See how much we are handling on events per year. That's much more than in Europe, in the US, or in Asia. How much, the size of the events we are delivering is nowhere seen in the US, anywhere else in Americas, in Europe, or in Asia. So our events are always big because our surrounding governments, they spend a lot of money into these events. And I think we can be very, very lucky to work in this thriving industry and economy.
How did you manage the discussions around this? Because I know at the time, as I say, people were looking a little out. I mean, there was a lot of what I thought was encouraging about that time as well. It fostered a stronger sense of community. I think there were a lot of people that did actually try and come together and pull together to help those of other people who were really, really, really struggling. But at the same time, there was a little bit of like questions, shall we say, in terms of, particularly towards the Event Industry Association. So how did you manage those discussions? And also, how do you think that role played out during that time?
Well, so we started very, very fast with setting up another community outreach platform that was Crew for Crew, where we basically asked, okay, just take the skills that you have and redeploy them differently. So we know that some of the labor supply companies are starting with removals and helped with cheaper offices removals and cheaper warehouse removals, et cetera, during that time. We know that some of the set building companies, they went into interior fit outs, et cetera, et cetera. So this was all, again, a little bit of community engagement. So I need to have my apartment painted. Yeah, okay, I will do that for half the price than the painter's doing it because you are from the industry. We helped with jobs, et cetera, et cetera. So that was that good thing. And we tried to keep that into the Crew for Crew platform, keeping this out of the EINO platform. Again, in the EINO platform, we had the other challenge where people suddenly questioned of the state should pay me. Where's our association, et cetera, et cetera. Well, the question with the association was at that point, where's the association? People asked me to put on an association, but with the laws that we're having here in the UAE, that's not really possible because there's only one association per industry. So, and if this is set, and I'm not the person to run an association, that's just not me. I run communities. I can do that. I know how to do that, and I'm very social. But as an association head, that's not for me. So on the EINO platform, we try to moderate this in a way where we don't offend anyone. Obviously, it's a public page where people can join. It's not a private page. It's a company-run page because out of the laws that we have in the Middle East, we have to do that. So I maintain an extra trade license for that. So this is the amount of, I put into this whole setup of EINO. However, with this comes responsibility. And the responsibility was that you not censor, but you moderate what's going on there. Because some of the people who got very frustrated went out with anger. And I think some people didn't hit the right tone, understandably, because they were forced to do things that they wouldn't like to do. But I think as well, it was a learning curve for a lot of people. So the discussions toned down very much. And it was then again more about like, how can we work together? How can you help me? Of course, lots of people put lots of effort into that and said, okay, I need a job. Help me. Please help me. I need to pay my bills, et cetera, et cetera. But it's not about just like, I give you a job because you need to pay your bills. I need to also give the job to someone who can do the job. Otherwise, I'm doing two jobs. So it doesn't make sense.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that. I mean, two questions, really. We'll come on to this one in a second. I wanted to ask you about where you see or your thoughts about new talent coming into the industry. But before that, I just wanted to picking up on just the end of the pandemic. Do you think we've recovered? Do you think the industry is now at a stage where it was pre-pandemic?
That's a good question. I think post-pandemic, we had a massive spike with everything, with event technology sales, with companies springing up left, right, and center. Currently, I think we're a little bit hit by a saturation in the market, not only in terms of services companies, et cetera, also in terms of events. So you can actually see that we have a lot of events going on. Are the quality of the events getting better currently? In my own opinion, it's not.
You're not alone in that fact.
Yeah. So why is that? So is that because of the talent? Is it because of budgets? Is it because of there's just too many events? I personally think it's just too many events. There's a lot of event agencies who work on public events who cannot sell enough tickets because it's just oversaturation. On the other hand, people from other industries jumped into, okay, this event stuff is great because there's so many events, they need stuff. I'm going to become an event professional. But then again, with no means of getting trained, it's becoming very, very difficult. So everyone, especially post-pandemic, there was a lot of people saying, so I am a stage manager, I am a site manager, et cetera, et cetera. What's their qualification? So we don't have any protection in our job names, job descriptions. There is not even common job descriptions. If you take TV and if you take events, a producer is two different things.
Yeah.
A production manager in film and a production manager in events is two different things. The thing here is that lots of people said, okay, I can just cross-work. And this is where I think quality can go down because people just don't bring the necessary skills with them that you expect as a client.
Well, that's certainly a problem when it comes to event organizers. I mean, there's the old adage, isn't it, really, that all you need to be an event manager is, a phone and a filofax. Well, I'm dating myself there. Maybe not a filofax anymore, maybe an iPad. But there are, that's it. That's all you need. And a good, sense of organizational ability. So going back to young people and new talent come into the industry, where do you think we're at specifically here in the Middle East? Because I think across many industries, training is a forgotten word. It's the thing that you do if you've got a little bit of budget at the end of the year, I suspect, or if you absolutely have to. So how do young people come into the industry, and are they coming into the industry?
That's one of the big problems that I can see currently. There is a lot of young people who are trying to do like work experience, et cetera, et cetera. Thanks God, we have a couple of technical providers who have trainee programs, and they do this quite well. The other thing is that agencies don't really like to employ trainees because it's just for them, it's an extra burden. People ask questions, et cetera, et cetera. And in this fast-paced event industry, it's like bam, 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 bam. Yeah. You don't have time. It's also a lot of people still are under the impression that if I tell this young guy how it works, tomorrow he will take my job. I think this is completely wrong. Because at one point we will all become old, gray-haired and very slow, and there is no one there anymore to actually do our jobs. And then we have to work twice, and that's not how it should be. Young people are still coming in. A lot of people in between the 18 and 21-year-old, they want to do the influencer events. They don't want to do the company conference, the open days, et cetera, finding some people working on exhibitions. Seems to be a big problem. I think a lot of people, when they study economics and then go into project management, and this is how they should come into the events industry. Of course, you have your young people who go into training programs, but that's rarely. Younger people then see, I can work 20 hours a day in an events management company for this event, and I earn this little bit of money, or I go into, I don't want to say real estate, but
it's a popular route.
Yes, but I see young people going into trade again with like drop shipping and this kind of Amazon dealings, et cetera, which is for some successful, for others not so much. But definitely they don't need to work the 20 hours to make the same money. But I think this shift is in all of the industries that we are seeing. So trade is a big problem. So finding the carpenter, finding the mason and all of that is exactly the same thing. So trying to find younger people, it's problematic.
Yeah. Just circling back to what we were talking about in terms of, do we think the industry is where it's at? In particular, in reference to the standards. What are your thoughts for where the industry is at right now? You mentioned that you don't think the quality of events is perhaps as good as it used to be. What are the factors at play there? I mean, Dubai is no longer a cheap place to live, isn't it? Is cost one of those things? Is the talent drain one of those things, or a combination of everything?
It's a good question. So I attending a lot of events and I can see different things. There is the spend on production is going down to spend more on F&B experience, because I think it's about experiences. So I don't want to tap on anyone's shoes, but I don't think it's the talent per se. It's the focus of these events. So the focus of the events, of having this nice big screen with some entertainment, etc., etc. We have incredible entertainment in Dubai, incredible entertainment producers as well. I wish they could do what they want to do, because that would achieve a little, much more interesting stuff. So everything is just about like, we need to have this 5 minutes launch moment. And then it's about fancy cocktails. It's about this, that, and whatsoever. And I think a lot of other things where we're looking into like the good stuff, into like content, nice content production, on-screen content production, it's a little bit left out. The whole theatrical build of such a show is being left out. A lot of people basically say, I'm just doing an event. And the event is, the client told me they want this. And then I look into it and it's like, but it doesn't make sense. There's no story.
Yeah, correct.
So we need to build a story. Yeah, but it's not about the story. It's about the guests.
No, it's all about the story.
Yes. And I'm trying to explain this to people. And that's why I said, you need to trust me. I'm doing this for a couple of years and I built a story in this whole thing. And if I say this person needs to go from left to the right to the stage, there's a reason behind it. And just trust me, it just makes sense because you don't want to have like people crisscrossing stages. You don't want to have long blackouts in between a show, show segments.
Do you think creativity is also lacking? I mean, we've both been here, 20 something years. I'll be honest, in my experience of Dubai, I think in general, it's a bit risk averse across many industries, events being no exception. And if you combine that now with perhaps smaller budgets available for events, people just don't want to take risks.
Yes, that's one thing. Many years ago, we could see there's like, I don't want to say 6 to 8 or 10 companies, the large companies who doing all the big shows. And they were basically employing a lot of very experienced talent. Now we see these big shows shifted. We don't have this 50 big shows per year. We now have 1,000 smaller shows. And with the 1,000 smaller shows comes smaller budget, comes more people that you need. So you cannot get all this hyper knowledged professionals. So you need to get other people in there. And then a lot of people go to, we use this guy and we replicate our basically shows. And I have seen this with agencies who basically, a launch event is a launch event. We use the perfume bar, we use the cocktail guy, we use the same dancers that we had at the last launch. We only changed the content and it's basically the company name in the content. Yeah, you can do that. And honestly, it reduces the cost of the event, which is nice. However, as a guest, and you go, especially in the real estate sector, you go to a lot of events because that's where you basically buy your apartments. These people, they now have a little bit of fatigue. So they only go there or they come late when they know it's now been, I can talk to this guy and he sells me 10 or 20 apartments, but no one is really looking at it as a stage anymore. Yesterday, I was in an event and they had a very nice stage presenter. The MC was great, was brilliant, kept it really tight, kept it really online, bum. It was great. It was a networking event at the same time. And then there was this break in between where they had on-stage entertainment, which was a singer and a saxophonist. Well, the music was very nice, but it's something where, for me personally, everything fell down. And then they had suddenly appearing some really, really cool dance performance, but without announcing it. So a lot of people were either outside the room or looked at it and didn't really understand why is now this pearl dancers on stage. Well, I think this could have actually put a little bit better into perspective so that people have a better experience, because now just people go to an event, have their dinner, some awards have been given out, and that's it. So the experience part was a little bit missing.
Yeah. Just going back to the pandemic and what it's meant to people. I think our industry wasn't alone. Everybody had a lot of time on their hands. And I think there was a lot of time for introspection, wasn't there? We had a little chat before we started the podcast about what a fast-paced industry this is, the stress that it puts on you. I don't want to get into necessarily the whole mental health aspect, but I think, well-being became very much at the top of people's lists, didn't it? Looking after yourself, particularly looking after yourself. How have you changed post-pandemic? I know you alluded to a few personal health issues that you'd had. Can you talk to us a little bit about those and how that's affected your relationship with work and the industry?
Well, yeah, that's definitely a common thing. And you can see that the whole idea of mental health didn't really exist, to be very honest. And people just worked, and we had to deliver. I come from an generation, I call that the generation 8 p.m. 8 p.m. is the show time, regardless what. If you're ready or not, there are out hundreds or thousands of people who paid for a ticket and they want to see a show at 8. If you come in at 4 p.m. to set up the show or 4 a.m., it doesn't matter. It needs to be starting at 8. And this puts everyone under immense pressure. And you never had really time to, get this off. And you just have to cope with it.
Yeah.
And they always said, it spreads the weak from the strengths. And I think that this was wrong. And it's always an educational thing as well. So you have to progress. And in my own personal case, I took on too many jobs in 8 years or 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I could actually feel how I degraded, to be honest. So, and it was not only mentally, that was physically as well.
Yeah.
So, and I said, I need to put a stop on this because I have done all of this. So I don't need to prove that I can do all of this. And I just need to work in a way where it's healthy for me. And I think I found that line. And yes, with some things I was quite lucky. And now I'm not jumping from one opportunity to the other one. So opportunity needs to come, opportunity needs to be right. And then I say, yes, I'm going to do it, or I'm not going to do it, because otherwise you are becoming, again, the hamster in that wheel. I see now a lot of people that I grew up with or worked with in the last 15, 20 years, they basically step out. And I'm with the same people on jobs or on shows, et cetera, et cetera. And I can see these people. And instead of going to the bar in the evening, they do another yoga session. Or in the morning, I can see them in the gym, or people traveling with their bikes to cycle around, etc., etc. And I think that's really, really important that also younger people understand. Don't get into that treadmill. Just do what you think it's good for you. To balance this out. And yes, we all do stupid hours in these jobs. If you have only a 14-hour window to set up a show and then do the show and then dismantle, you need to plan with 2 sets of crew. You cannot continue with the same people who set up your show to rehearse the show, to do the show, to dismantle everything. So there are some of the event technology companies have actually made this now right. So where they have a setup crew who is also the dismantling crew, and they have a rehearsal and show crew. And I think these companies, they do it right.
I think there's an interesting dynamic that's come about post-pandemic. I think, many years ago, everybody talked a lot about work-life balance, but it was rarely something we ever got right. It might be something that we talk about with our mates in the pub or over a coffee. But did we really put any steps into place to really try and maintain that work-life balance? I suspect not many of us did. Interestingly now, it's really come to the forefront, hasn't it? I think that time off, that time of stillness and introspection during COVID made people really evaluate what they wanted out of life. And how hard they wanted to work. But since then, I think that whole attitude towards how much I'm prepared to do, I think people have realized that there's a limit, and actually, looking after yourself, spending quality time with loved ones, et cetera, that's all really, really important.
We always joked about the old people in the events industry when they went out for a round of golf. But honestly, it was the right thing. So I joined many years ago that club of the club swingers, and it was great. It was exactly the thing. The only thing that I did wrong was playing golf with event people. Because you only talk about events. So when I swapped, and I'm playing now a lot of golf with hospitality people. It's a different story. So you completely talk about families, etc., and not necessarily about work, which is very, very nice. I also have seen that a lot of companies changed in terms of employee well-being. Even smaller companies, I see now, they have their pedal groups, they have their morning running groups, or there's one well-known event technology provider who has their own cycling team. and they all cycle together. And there's the owner of the company is really at the forefront. I don't know how many bikes he has in his house. So he's encouraging a lot of people in his company to actually have the cycling going on, which is great. And I can see these people on group rides, etc., with their own kit. So, and I think that's the right thing. We have in a lot of the larger event technology companies, you have your Filipino basketball teams, which is great. So they have the summer basketball tournaments with each other. Absolutely great. And if employers are encouraging their people to actually take that time to do that sport, not only the sport or like this time together, it's also creating a bit more camaraderie. It resolves a lot of stress in the company, interpersonality stress. And I think it's the right way to do so.
Yeah, I think, absolutely. I agree 100% with what you said there. I think, you do get benefit from the payback. If you look after your staff, that you will reap the rewards. Stefan, before we go, are you a music fan?
Absolutely.
Okay, we've been asking everybody this. My vinyl collection is growing once again. What's on your playlist at the moment?
Oh, to be very honest, currently it's less music and more podcasts.
Interesting.
Industry podcasts, a few.
Yeah.
Politic podcasts. I know that sounds weird, but that's very interesting for me. Financial podcasts, because I'm going into an age where I need to know what I'm doing with my money. I don't know if it's the right thing to listen to these people, but it's cool. Music wise, I'm switching in between early 90s rock, mid 90s techno.
We're dating ourselves here.
Absolutely hardcore techno. I just attended on the 28th of December. I really, really like a very dark. There was only one stroboscope in that bunker. It was literally a bunker.
Yeah. I hate to typecast, but the Germans really do love their techno.
That was amazing. And you really let yourself go. It was great. Big stadium shows. I don't like that anymore. I know everyone was raving about the Coldplay shows. It's not for me. I'm now more into like big artists in intimate club shows. Is a game changer. As if you have the opportunity to do so, do it. Is great.
And finally, two last questions. Professionally, where do you see the industry in 2025? And personally, where do you see yourself?
Well, in 2025, in our Middle Eastern industry so we are lined up for huge conferences. We are lined up for huge sports events. Again, Saudi Arabia is a beast of its own. It's growing and it's exploding with all the esports events. We are lined up. We're coming back to more arty events, which is nice. We're seeing more and more independent, underground would be the wrong word, but independent organized events. Al-Sakal Avenue, they're doing a lot of events in Warehouse 4. There is a lot of events going on that who are not on the mainstream calendar, which is nice. And this whole subculture that we have in Dubai is amazing. I can see that how it's been growing in Riyadh now. There's also this kind of subcultural thing going on. Is it coming to other Middle Eastern cities? Not really sure. But I think we have a very, very good year 2025 ahead. When I speak to friends in the industry, everyone says, calendars are filling up, which is a good sign. Seeing myself in 2025 is I will be traveling a lot. There will be industry technology shows where I will be in attendance. I have to see clients around the Middle East. So my calendar up to end of April is quite full. So I'm quite happy that I'm traveling. I'm seeing people. I'm doing the business. So I'm also looking forward to this year.
Yeah. Well, Stefan, thanks for joining me today, and I wish you a prosperous and happy 2025.
Thank you, Ian. It was great being here, and I can really, really recommend the studio as well. It's a good setup. Seriously, I like that.
Thank you very much. EventNewsDXB was presented by myself, Ian Carless. The studio engineer and editor was Roy DeMonte. The executive producer was myself and Joe Morrison. And this podcast is a co-production between Warehouse 4 and W4 Podcast Studio Dubai. And if you haven't done so already, please do click that follow or subscribe button. See you next time.
EventNewsDXB.